Hey everyone, it's January 26th, 2025, and wow, do we have a lot to unpack today, from historical commemorations to international conflicts and even a bit of art and culture. It's a truly global news day.
Definitely a lot going on. Ready to dive in.
Absolutely. So first up, we're going back in time, 80 years, to a pivotal moment in history, the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. World leaders and a handful of survivors, many now in their late 80s and 90s, gathered to remember the 80th anniversary of this event, a stark reminder of the horrors of the Holocaust.
It's a powerful reminder, especially as the number of survivors continues to dwindle. There are firsthand accounts like Jonah Lax's story of narrowly escaping death simply because a bored SS guard was using a random selection method, are chilling reminders of just how arbitrary and cruel the Nazi regime truly was. But this year's commemoration has another layer to it, don't you think?
Yeah, you're right. The absence of Russia speaks volumes, especially considering the ongoing war in Ukraine. And while Russia acknowledges the Holocaust, their current narrative seems to emphasize Soviet suffering during World War II.
It's interesting, this shift in emphasis. Historian Konstantin Pakaljuk suggests that this narrative kind of portrays Russia as a victim, potentially absolving them of certain responsibilities. It really highlights how historical narratives can be reinterpreted through the lens of current events.
Yeah, definitely makes you think. So let's shift gears now to a much more recent international dispute. The US and Colombia butted heads over deportation flights.
It's funny how these seemingly small logistical details can blow up into these big diplomatic clashes. Colombia refused to accept deportees on U.S. military aircraft. They argued for more humane treatment of their citizens, wanting them returned on civilian planes instead.
And how did President Trump respond? Well, he threatened to slap a 25% tariff on Colombian goods. Pretty classic strong-arm tactics, some might say.
It does make you wonder about the methods the U.S. might use to pressure other countries on immigration policies. Does this set a precedent for using economic leverage? And what about the impact on U.S. consumers? They're the ones who ultimately end up footing the bill.
All really good points. In the end, though, Colombia did agree to Trump's demands, but it definitely leaves us wondering about the implications going forward.
For sure. Now let's head over to the Middle East, where there's been a new development in the Lebanon-Israel ceasefire.
Oh, right, the ceasefire. It did get extended until February 18th, but it's not all good news, is it?
Unfortunately, no. Tragically, 22 Lebanese were killed and 124 injured on Sunday. It's being reported that they were attacked by Israeli soldiers while they were returning to their homes. This just shows how fragile this situation is, even with the ceasefire extension.
It's a harsh reminder of how hard it is to achieve lasting peace in such a volatile region. And then you've got Hezbollah, still present in southern Lebanon, which Israel says justifies keeping their troops there even past the initial ceasefire deadline.
This incident really throws a spotlight on that complex web of political and military factors at play here. The goal is to fully implement the ceasefire agreement, which includes Hezbollah withdrawing and the release of Lebanese prisoners. But achieving those goals is going to be a tough road.
Absolutely. Okay, let's turn now to the Jeju air crash investigation in South Korea. If you remember, this crash back in December tragically killed 179 people.
Right, and investigators now think they may have found a culprit, a bird strike. They discovered bird feathers and bloodstains in both engines, specifically from a Batal teal duck.
So a bird strike was likely involved, but is that the whole story?
Well, there's more to it. The plane also hit a concrete structure at the end of the runway, which investigators are now scrutinizing. The pilot apparently reported the bird strike and even issued a mayday signal before trying a belly landing, but sadly it wasn't enough. This whole incident has raised concerns about those concrete barriers used at other airports across the country, and now authorities are reviewing their safety.
It's a stark reminder that aviation safety is incredibly complex, often involving a whole chain of events that can lead to tragedy.
It really is. Okay, so shifting focus to the Baltic Sea, we have a story with a bit of intrigue. Sweden seized a ship suspected of damaging a crucial data cable that connects to Latvia.
Sounds like something straight out of a spy film. Underwater sabotage, maybe.
That's exactly what investigators are considering. And this isn't an isolated incident either. This seems to be part of a pattern of attacks on underwater cables in this region.
Any idea who might be behind these attacks?
Well, Latvia's prime minister stressed how important it is to work with Sweden and NATO on this issue. And there's been speculation that this could be connected to Russia's so-called shadow fleet. You know, those unmarked vessels suspected of carrying out these clandestine operations.
It definitely reminds us how vulnerable underwater infrastructure can be and highlights the ongoing tensions in the region.
For sure. Now, speaking of tensions, let's look at Belarus, where Alexander Lukashenko, often called Europe's last dictator, has won himself another term as president.
Right, and this election was widely condemned as undemocratic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
His main opponents were either behind bars or forced out of the country.
Exactly. Lukashenko defended the election, saying that his opponents chose their fates and that the Belarusian people's recognition mattered more than international observers.
That's a pretty bold statement. And how did the international community respond to all this?
The EU didn't mince words. They condemned the election as an affront to democracy, which obviously puts further strain on relations with Belarus. This is definitely a situation to keep an eye on, as it could have major consequences for the geopolitical landscape.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Greenland now. Seems President Trump has brought it back into the news.
You're referring to his renewed interest in the U.S. taking control of Greenland, the autonomous Danish territory.
Exactly. He said he's confident that the U.S. will get Greenland because of its strategic importance. He even went so far as to suggest that the residents actually want to be part of the U.S.
Of course, both Greenland and Denmark have made it crystal clear that the island is not for sale, which has led to some tense back and forth with President Trump. And remember, this isn't the first time he's expressed interest in Greenland.
Oh, right back in 2019, he caused quite a stir with that idea. So is this just Trump being Trump, or is there something more strategic at play here?
Well, it's probably a little of both, to be honest. But this renewed interest does coincide with the growing global attention on Greenland's vast mineral resources, particularly those rare earth minerals.
So there's a definite geopolitical angle to this fascination, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Countries are looking for alternatives to China's dominance in rare earth minerals, and Greenland has huge potential in that area.
It's fascinating how seemingly unrelated events can be linked by these underlying geopolitical currents. Okay, let's go back to South Korea, where there's been a major development in the case of impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol.
Yes, he's been formally charged with insurrection for trying to declare martial law back in December. This is unprecedented in South Korea, marking the first time a sitting president has faced criminal charges.
Wow, that's a huge escalation. So what happens if he's convicted?
He could face life imprisonment. Right now, the Constitutional Court is deliberating whether to remove him from office permanently or to reinstate him. It's really thrown South Korean politics into turmoil, and the outcome will definitely have lasting consequences for the country.
Definitely a lot of uncertainty there. Now, from political dramas to audacious heists, it seems no news day is complete without a touch of intrigue. Speaking of which, let's talk about the recent theft at the Drents Museum in the Netherlands.
Ah, yes. The theft of those 4 ancient gold artifacts from the Romanian exhibition. And these weren't just petty thieves. They used explosives to break into the museum.
Explosives? That's pretty daring.
It's the biggest heist the museum has seen in over 170 years. And one of the stolen pieces is the iconic helmet of Coda Finesti, a national treasure for Romania.
I'm sure authorities are doing everything they can to recover these priceless artifacts.
Oh, absolutely. The police are looking into everything, the explosives, the burnt-out vehicle found nearby, and they're working closely with Interpol to track down those thieves and get those treasures back.
It just goes to show the lengths criminals will go to and how important it is to protect cultural heritage. Okay, let's circle back to Greenland for a moment and dig a little deeper into this whole mineral wealth situation that's got everyone talking.
You mean the potential mining boom? It's not just about rare earth minerals either. Greenland also has significant deposits of gold, lithium, cobalt, and more.
So with all these resources, is Greenland on track to become a mining superpower?
Well, not so fast. There are some major challenges to overcome. The harsh climate, the limited infrastructure, the high costs, and of course the environmental concerns all pose significant hurdles.
Right. It's not just about extracting these resources. It's about doing it responsibly and making sure that the local population benefits.
Exactly. Greenland's at a critical crossroads right now. They have to figure out how to balance economic opportunity with protecting their unique environment and culture. These are questions with big implications for the future of this Arctic nation.
It's a delicate balance for sure. Okay, lastly, let's end on a story that highlights both tragedy and hope. We're talking about India's Sundarbans region, where a truly heartbreaking statistic shows that 3 children drown every single day.
It's a devastating reality, but there is a glimmer of hope. Mothers in the Sundarbans are stepping up and taking action to prevent these tragedies. They're forming groups to take care of children and to teach their communities about water safety.
It's truly inspiring to see these mothers taking charge becoming a beacon of hope in the face of such adversity.
It really speaks to the power of community action and the incredible dedication of mothers who refuse to let tragedy define their children's future.
Yeah,
Yeah, it really is a powerful testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit.
absolutely. And speaking of inspiring young people, we have another story about a teenager from Kenya. She's using her voice to shine a light on a truly global issue.
You're talking about Michelle Lemuya Ikeni, right?
Mm.
The 15-year-old actress who's starring in Nawi, a film about a schoolgirl forced into child marriage.
That's the one. It's based on true stories, and Ikeni's performance is getting rave reviews. What's really striking is that she draws on her own experiences and what she's seen to portray this character.
Nawi aims to spark conversations about child marriage, and not just in Kenya. They want this film to reach a global audience. It's a reminder that this harmful practice is still happening to millions of girls around the world, stealing their childhoods and their futures.
It's so encouraging to see young people like Ikeni using their platform to raise awareness and advocate for change. Their voices are so important in this fight.
Absolutely. Now let's switch gears back to American politics. President Trump's second term is already off to a dramatic start, wouldn't you say?
It's definitely a different Trump than we saw in his first term. Analysts are saying he's more confident, more emboldened.
There's definitely a shift in his approach. He seems less concerned with, political norms or trying to appease his critics, and he's surrounded himself with people who are fiercely loyal to him.
Yeah, his first week back in office was a whirlwind of executive orders, many of them aimed at reversing policies put in place by his predecessor.
He's making it clear that he's here to implement his agenda, and he's not wasting any time. Some might even say he's taking a much more aggressive stance now. His decision to pardon those involved in the Capitol riots, for example, that sparked a lot of controversy.
It was definitely a bold move and one that's drawn both praise and condemnation.
That move, along with his push to gain control of Greenland, has put Trump front and center on the world stage.
It feels like Trump 2.0 is operating on a whole other level.
There's a definite sense of that. Whether you agree with his methods or not, there's no denying that he's a force to be reckoned with. It'll be fascinating to see what happens next.
It's definitely a lot to take in, and his actions are going to have a ripple effects for years to come. But hey, isn't that what keeps things interesting? The world's always changing, and we're right here watching it happen.
You said it. We're living in this era of huge transformation, and it's exciting, but also kind of scary. It really makes you realize how important it is to stay informed, to keep those critical thinking skills sharp, and to really engage with the news.
I totally agree. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by all the news and information out there.
Yeah.
But taking that time to dig deeper, to really understand the nuances, that's what helps us make sense of it all.
Yeah, it's not just about knowing the headlines. It's about understanding why things are happening, how everything's connected, and how these global issues actually impact our lives.
Well said. And on that note, we've come to the end of another jam-packed news day.
It's been a fascinating journey, as always.
And for everyone listening out there, here's a final thought for you to chew on. We talked about the race for resources, the struggle for power, and the fight for justice. But at the end of the day, it's those human stories that really stick with us. The survivors of Auschwitz, the mothers in the Sundarbans, that young actress speaking out against child marriage. They remind us of the strength of the human spirit, the power of hope, even when things seem bleak. That's all for today. Stay curious, keep exploring the world around you, and we'll catch you next time.